Captain Rhinala Veth stood at the edge of the observation deck, staring into the vast emptiness of space. Stars stretched endlessly, sparkling like distant memories, but even their beauty couldn't mask the uneasy feeling in her chest. For as long as she had served in the Alari fleet, she had relied on logic, training, and discipline. Legends, myths, and stories were for entertainment, not strategy. Yet somewhere deep inside, Rhinala couldn't shake the sense that the galaxy held secrets, some older than the oldest star. She had heard the stories countless times, tales of humans, warriors of Earth who had supposedly faced enemies that would have destroyed entire civilizations. Every officer in the fleet learned the tales during training, but everyone dismissed them. After all, humans had been extinct for over 1,000 years. Or so the galaxy believed. Captain Veth, a voice broke her reverie. It was Lieutenant Oren Tell, her second in command, stepping onto the deck with a tablet in hand. Sensors have picked up something unusual. It's drifting near the outer rim. Rhinala's eyes narrowed. Unusual? What do you mean? Another asteroid field? A lost cargo ship? Oren shook his head. No, Captain. This is different. The readings are older than anything we've cataloged. It doesn't match any known ship design. And it's moving, slowly but deliberately. Her curiosity sparked. The outer rim was a quiet, desolate part of space, where most civilizations rarely ventured. If something was out here, it could be a remnant of the old wars or something entirely unknown. Prepare a boarding crew, she ordered. I want to see it for myself. Within the hour, Rhinala's team approached the drifting vessel. It was massive but battered, covered in scars from meteoroid impacts in time itself. Its design was unlike anything the Alari had ever built. It looked old, ancient even, but the engineering was precise, purposeful. This was not a derelict abandoned for centuries. It had a history and it had survived. Open a comlink, Rhinala instructed. Let's see if anyone, or anything. Answers static filled the speakers, then silence. No greetings, no distress signals. Just emptiness, Captain, Oren said, frowning. The ship is in cryostasis. I'm detecting something inside. Something alive. Rhinala felt a chill run down her spine. She had expected a few remains, maybe old tech, but living, in this abandoned relic. She ordered the docking sequence, and soon the boarding crew floated through the airlock into the dark interior. The corridors were dimly lit, filled with the scent of metal and dust. Panels flickered as the crew moved cautiously, weapons ready, though none expected real danger. Their flashlights revealed walls lined with strange symbols, unfamiliar technology, and a faint hum that suggested power still lingered within the ship's systems. Then they found it, a single cryopod, sealed and glowing faintly. Vital signs were faint but steady. A life form had survived. Rhinala approached the pod herself, her heart pounding. What is it? She whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Not sure, Oren replied. I've never seen life signs like this. Wait, I think it's human. Impossible, muttered another crew member. Humans have been extinct for centuries, but there was no mistaking it. The life signs were unmistakably Terran. Small, steady, alive, the pod hissed as she activated it, its ancient mechanisms grinding and whirring. Cold gas filled the room and the hatch slowly opened. Inside was a man, tall, broad-shouldered, and clearly not expecting visitors. His eyes opened slowly, clear and sharp, and for a moment the room fell silent. The crew could feel something in his presence, something commanding, almost magnetic. He moved with ease, strength, and balance that seemed almost unreal. The man studied the room calmly. His gaze was sharp, calculating, and despite his long slumber, completely alert. He did not panic. He did not speak immediately. He simply observed. Identify yourself, Rhinala finally said. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. He blinked, then spoke, his voice low but firm. I am Commander Elias Kane, Terran Defense Command. Status operational. The words hit her like a shockwave. The Terran Defense Command. That was not just a legend. It was a myth that every officer had scoffed at. Humans, extinct for over 1,000 years, were supposed to be gone forever. And yet here he was, alive. Rhinala stepped closer. How is this possible? Kane's eyes scanned the room, taking in the crew, the ship, the technology. Cryostasis, he said simply. I was preserved until conditions were safe, or until I could continue my mission. Your mission? Oren asked, incredulous. What mission? There is no war left. The humans are extinct. Kane's eyes hardened. The war is not over. It never ended. It only paused. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. They had heard legends of humans facing impossible enemies, fighting with courage and strategy beyond imagination. But they had always assumed it was story, myth, exaggeration. Now standing before them was proof. Rennala felt a mix of awe and fear. She had faced many battles, but never anything like this. This human, this warrior, carried a presence that made her question everything she thought she knew about history. Power and survival, Captain, Kane said, his voice calm. Your sensors detected something. That is correct. I'm here for a reason. There is a threat approaching. A force that even your best strategists cannot predict. I was sent to prepare, to guide, to fight. Rennala swallowed hard. She wanted to ask questions, so many questions, but she realized this man, this human, had not been brought here by accident. He was meant to appear at this moment in this place for a purpose far greater than any of them could imagine. Captain, Orin said quietly, we should inform the fleet. This is monumental. He could be the key to— Not yet, Rennala interrupted. She turned back to Kane. We will not treat you as a weapon. You are under my protection, but you will answer my questions. First, what exactly is happening? And why now? Kane nodded slightly as if he expected the question. The galaxy believes humanity has vanished. They are wrong. I survived because someone had to. The forces I once fought have returned. The Car Dominion is rising again, and I cannot face them alone. Rennala felt a chill. The Car Dominion was an ancient enemy, thought to have been destroyed centuries ago. If Kane was telling the truth, then not only had humans survived, they had been the first line of defense against a threat that could destroy countless civilizations. She looked at him carefully. Every word he spoke seemed measured, precise. There was no exaggeration in his tone, no hint of deception. The calmness, the strength, the unwavering focus, it was exactly what the old legends had described about Terran warriors. For the first time in her life, Rennala considered the possibility that the stories were not just stories. Humanity's warriors had not died. They had simply waited, hidden and preserved, ready to return when the galaxy needed them most. And now, standing before her, was proof. The room was quiet. Even the hum of the ship seemed to pause, as if space itself was listening. Kane stepped out of the pod, stretching slowly, his movements controlled but full of power. Every gesture seemed to convey discipline, experience, and confidence. Rennala felt a strange mixture of fear and respect. This was not a man to be underestimated. He was a force of nature, a living legend, and perhaps the galaxy's last hope. She spoke finally, her voice firm. Commander Kane, you will remain on my ship. I will not allow harm to come to you. But you must explain everything. If what you say is true, then the galaxy has been living a lie, and we may all be in greater danger than we realize. Kane nodded, his expression calm. Then let us begin. Time is short, and the threat approaches faster than you know. And with that, the first chapter of a story long thought forgotten began to unfold. Legends were no longer just words, they were alive. And Rennala realized that the galaxy would never be the same again. The stars outside seemed to shine brighter, but for her, they no longer represented emptiness. They were a warning, a challenge, and perhaps a promise. Humanity's warriors were not extinct, and she had just met one. The hum of the derelict ship had been steady for hours, but now it seemed almost alive, vibrating with anticipation. Commander Elias Kane had stepped fully out of the cryopod and was moving through the corridors with careful, precise steps. He examined everything, panels, consoles, even the scratches on the walls, with eyes that missed nothing. Captain Rennala Veth followed closely, trying to make sense of the living legend before her. Every officer aboard her ship had grown up hearing stories of humans, but none had expected to meet one. And now Kane was here, standing in front of her, alive and fully conscious. Captain, Kane said, stopping near a console, this ship is older than your fleet realizes. It contains information that the galaxy assumed was lost. I need access to it immediately. Rennala raised an eyebrow. And you trust me to provide it? How do I know we are not walking into a trap? Kane smiled faintly, a motion that carried neither arrogance nor fear. You don't, but you have courage, and that counts for more than most realize. I will not harm your crew. I am a warrior, not a destroyer. Rennala felt a shiver of respect. There was something about Kane, an aura of certainty honed over countless battles that made her instinctively trust him. Against her better judgment, she activated the ship's main systems. The ancient ship groaned as power coursed through its circuits. Lights flickered and holographic displays came to life. Kane's eyes scanned the data streams. These logs. They are centuries old, yet still intact. This ship carried the final instructions of the Terran Defense Command. It contains the last recorded strategy against the Car Dominion. Oren Tal, ever curious, leaned forward. The Car? I thought they were extinct. Aren't they just a story like humans? Kane's expression darkened. Stories? No, they survived. They were defeated, yes, but not destroyed. Their fleet scattered and their leaders hid. Now they are returning, faster than you imagine, and the galaxy is unprepared. Rennala felt a cold tension in her chest. The legends were no longer stories, they were warnings. She had commanded battles, studied strategy, and faced enemies of terrifying strength. But something about Kane's words, the way he spoke, made her realize that the danger he described was beyond anything her fleet had encountered. Kane continued. Humans once stood as the galaxy's shield. We faced enemies that were stronger, faster, and more numerous. But we survived, we won, and I survived to ensure that humanity's knowledge and strategy could continue. One of the junior officers, unable to contain his curiosity, asked, "Why did you sleep for so long? Why now?" Kane turned his gaze to the young officer. Because the galaxy needed time to forget humans. Only when they believed we were gone would the Car make their move. My mission was to preserve knowledge, remain hidden and awaken only when the threat returned. Rennala's mind was racing. So you were waiting? For centuries? Yes, Kane said simply. To ensure that the first strike against the Car would be effective, the Terran strategy needed to survive intact. Timing is everything. They must not realize we still exist until it is too late for them. The realization sank in. Humans had not just fought wars. They had planned for the long game, thinking in centuries instead of decades. They had survived extinction and preserved their knowledge. And now Kane was here, ready to guide the galaxy once again. Rennala asked carefully, "Then what happens now? What is the first step?" Kane's eyes softened, but his tone remained firm. First, we assess the current state of the galaxy. Then we prepare. The Car are cunning. They strike where defenses are weakest, sowing chaos before attacking directly. Most fleets today are unprepared for their tactics, but with strategy, planning, and courage, even a smaller force can turn the tide. Oren looked doubtful. But how can one human help against an entire dominion? We have fleets, weapons, numbers. Kane smiled faintly. Numbers are not victory. Intelligence, strategy, and courage are. You will see. The next several hours were filled with briefings and examination of the ancient ship systems. Kane moved efficiently, analyzing data, correcting errors, and explaining complex strategies in simple terms that everyone could understand. His presence was commanding, but he never belittled anyone. Every officer felt that he was teaching, not dictating. Rennala observed him closely. She had faced brilliant tacticians in her career, but Kane's mind was different. It was precise, adaptive, and creative. He could see patterns where others saw chaos. He could anticipate moves before they were made. Finally, Kane paused. There is something you need to know, he said. The Car will strike near the outer rim. They will test defenses first, probing for weaknesses. If we act now, we can turn their attack into an opportunity. But it requires cooperation, trust, and courage from everyone aboard this fleet. Rennala felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She had never doubted her crew, but now she realized that the galaxy itself depended on her choices, and in front of her stood a warrior whose experience dwarfed her own. Then we prepare, she said firmly. Tell us what to do. Kane nodded. We begin by securing this region. We cannot allow the Car to advance unnoticed. I will train your officers in the strategies of the Terrans. Some may seem unconventional, but every principle has a purpose. Humanity's strength is not in overwhelming force, it is in thinking, adapting, and refusing to yield. The training began immediately. Kane demonstrated simulations, showing the crew how to anticipate enemy moves, deploy ships in ways that defied conventional wisdom, and coordinate attacks with precision. He emphasized adaptability, teaching them to change tactics in real time and to trust their instincts. For hours, the officers practiced, questioned, and learned. Some were skeptical at first, but by the end of the day, even the most doubtful could see the brilliance of Kane's methods. Rennala watched as her crew transformed. Confidence grew. They were no longer just a fleet. They were beginning to think like Terran warriors, prepared to face an enemy that others might flee from. That evening, as the stars outside the observation deck glimmered, Kane stood beside Rennala. "You see," he said softly, "the galaxy may forget humans, but courage is never lost. It can be shared, taught, and remembered. These officers will carry what they learn into battle, and together we will change the course of events." Rennala looked at him, realizing the truth in his words. The galaxy might have doubted humans, might have treated them as myths, but their spirit was alive, embodied not just in Kane, but now in the crew he had trained. She took a deep breath. "I never thought I would see a human in my lifetime, and now I see one teaching my fleet. This changes everything." Kane smiled faintly. "It should. Legends exist for a reason. They remind those who come after what is possible. Humans were never ordinary, and neither are those who carry their teachings forward." For the first time in centuries, a human warrior had awoken, and with him, hope returned to a galaxy that had forgotten how to fight with courage, intelligence, and honor. Outside, in the endless black of space, a small glimmer appeared on the sensors, a distant fleet moving with precision and purpose. Kane's eyes narrowed. "They are coming. Soon you will see why the galaxy once feared humans. But fear is not the point. Preparation, courage, and unity, that is what will allow us to face them." Rennala felt her heart quicken. The stories had been true. The legends were real. Humanity's warriors had survived. And now, she and her crew were part of a story that would test every lesson, every tactic, and every ounce of courage they possessed. The outer rim had grown quiet, almost expectant, as if it sensed the coming storm. But Rennala no longer felt fear. She felt resolve. With Kane guiding them, she knew her fleet could face what lay ahead, and perhaps even change the fate of the galaxy. For the first time in her life, she understood the truth behind the legends. Humans were warriors not just because of strength or weapons, but because they never gave up, never surrendered, and never forgot the value of courage and strategy. And now, she was about to witness that courage in action. The outer rim had always been quiet, a forgotten edge of the galaxy where stars shone cold and distant. But now, for Captain Rennala Veth and her crew, silence carried tension. Every sensor ping, every flicker on the displays, seemed to whisper of something coming, something dangerous. Commander Elias Kane moved through the bridge with a calm that contrasted sharply with the rising unease of the fleet. His eyes scanned the screens, noting small details others overlooked. The subtle movement of distant ships, unusual energy, signatures, and irregular pulses of radiation that suggested life beyond the known charts. "Captain," Kane said, his voice steady, "we are not alone. The Kar have returned." Rennala froze. The Kar Dominion, thought to have been defeated centuries ago, was legendary even among myth. They were ruthless, intelligent, and relentless, known for their ability to strike where defenses were weakest. To face them unprepared was unthinkable. "How soon?" she asked, her voice firm despite the chill in her chest. "Sooner than you imagine," Kane replied. "They test first, probe defenses, and measure reaction times. We have only hours to prepare before they make their first move." Oren Tal, leaning over the sensors, frowned. "But we don't know their numbers. Their ships could be hundreds, thousands strong." Kane nodded. "Numbers alone do not decide outcomes. Strategy, adaptability, and courage do. Humanity once faced enemies 5 times stronger and survived. We will do so again." Rennala realized she was not simply being given a warning. She was being given a lesson. Kane had not only survived the Kar, but had once led entire fleets against them. And now, he was ready to teach her and her crew how to fight as humans had fought, with precision, unpredictability, and heart. Preparing the fleet. The next hours were a whirlwind of activity. Kane instructed the officers to rearrange their formations, deploying ships in patterns no simulation had ever suggested. At first, skepticism rippled through the bridge. Fleet commanders, had relied on centuries of tactics passed down from their ancestors, and these Terran strategies seemed counterintuitive. "Captain," one officer said nervously, "this formation leaves our flanks exposed. If the car strike there—" Kane interrupted gently but firmly. "The car expect predictable behavior. By leaving space where they anticipate vulnerability, we create opportunity. Their advantage is in expectation, not reality. Trust your instincts. Trust the plan. Adapt. And they cannot anticipate your moves." Rennala watched the officer's expressions shift from doubt to cautious curiosity. Slowly, confidence grew, as Kane explained not just where to place ships, but why, how human ingenuity and anticipation could turn disadvantage into strength. He also emphasized communication. Information is more powerful than weapons. A fleet that sees, shares, and reacts faster than its enemy is unstoppable. Do not underestimate the power of coordination. Even the youngest crew members absorbed the lesson. Kane's calm authority inspired them. He did not speak of fear, only preparation, observation, and action. By the time the fleet was arranged, they were no longer simply a collection of ships. They were a networked unit, ready to act with one mind, one strategy. The first signs late that evening, the sensors picked up movement on the edge of known space. Small ships moving silently, probing the outskirts of the fleet. Kane leaned over the console, his eyes sharp. "Scouts," he said. "They test. They are checking our reaction times, looking for weakness. This is the first wave. Observe carefully." Rennala felt the tension tighten in her chest. The car were real. They were close. And for the first time in centuries, humans, through Kane, would face them once again. "Captain," Kane said, "this is where training meets reality. Watch and learn, but do not act rashly. The enemy's strength lies in anticipation. Your strength lies in surprise." The car scouts moved closer. Their ships were sleek, efficient, and armed with energy weapons that could tear through smaller craft with ease. But Kane remained calm. He instructed the fleet to hold their positions, to communicate rapidly, and to anticipate the scouts' maneuvers. As the first scouts approached, Kane's plan unfolded. The fleet, under his guidance, executed a series of movements that seemed impossible. Ships appeared to be vulnerable, then repositioned in ways that trapped the enemy in their own assumptions. The car scouts hesitated, recalculated, and then retreated, confused and frustrated. Rennala felt awe rise within her. She had seen battles, led missions, and faced enemies that terrified ordinary soldiers. Yet the ease with which Kane's human strategies turned the tide against superior numbers was unlike anything she had imagined. "See?" Kane said softly. "Courage and clarity are more powerful than firepower. Anticipate, adapt, and act. That is the way of the Terran warrior, a glimpse of humanity's strength." The fleet spent the next hours in near-constant training and maneuvering. Kane pushed them further, teaching subtle principles. How to use energy fields to mask movement. How to exploit enemy psychology, predicting hesitation and overconfidence. How to coordinate attacks so that every ship reinforced another, creating layers of defense and offense simultaneously. Rennala noticed a change in her officers. They moved more confidently, spoke with clarity, and began making decisions based on instinct honed through Kane's lessons. The fleet was no longer a group of individuals. It was becoming something greater. Kane watched this transformation quietly. Humans survive because they are flexible, because they learn, because they never give up even when everything seems lost. Today, your fleet has begun to embody that principle, but the real test is yet to come. The warning came quickly. Sensors detected a massive energy surge on the far side of the rim. Ships moved in formation, confirming Kane's prediction. The main car force was approaching, faster and larger than the fleet had anticipated. "Captain," Kane said, "they are coming. Now we see if preparation meets reality. Trust your instincts, trust the fleet, and above all, trust courage." The calm. Before the storm. As the fleet waited, the bridge hummed with tension. Officers adjusted controls, exchanged information, and followed Kane's guidance. Rhinala looked at him, realizing that this was more than strategy. This was mentorship, history in motion, and the living embodiment of the human spirit. "The Car expect fear," Kane continued. "They expect hesitation. We will give them none. You will see that courage, unity, and adaptability outweigh size, speed, or firepower. That is the lesson of humanity's warriors." Outside, space seemed to stretch endlessly, silent, but filled with unseen threats. The Car ships moved closer, but the fleet under Rhinala's command was ready, not just with weapons but with insight, instinct, and preparation, taught by a human who had survived centuries. Rhinala felt a strange calm herself. Fear had not vanished, but it had been replaced with determination. She realized something essential. The galaxy might have forgotten humans, but the principles they represented, courage, intelligence, and unity, had never truly vanished. And now they would be tested. Kane moved to a tactical console, adjusting formations, anticipating moves, and assigning roles. "Remember," he said, "it is not strength alone that wins battles. It is preparation, adaptability, and the refusal to yield. We will see the truth of that today." And then, the first wave of the Car fleet appeared on the sensors, sleek and deadly, their numbers far greater than anyone had expected. Energy weapons glowed against the backdrop of distant stars. Yet, thanks to Kane, the fleet remained composed, coordinated, and ready. Rhinala gripped the console. "Captain's orders?" Kane's gaze met hers. "Observe, adapt, lead when the time comes, and remember, a human never gives up, even when the odds are against them." The first clash was imminent. Space itself seemed to hold its breath. For the first time in centuries, a human warrior was preparing to face the Car dominion again. And this time the galaxy would witness the true meaning of courage, strategy, and the enduring spirit of humanity. The Car fleet loomed at the edge of the rim, a dark wave of sleek ships that seemed to stretch endlessly. Captain Rhinala Veth stood on the bridge, watching the energy pulses on the sensors. The tension was thick, yet a strange calm had settled over her. She had faced danger before, but never like this. Never against an enemy so unknown, so cunning. Beside her, Commander Elias Kane moved with quiet confidence. His gaze was sharp, calculating every detail, anticipating every possible move. "Remember," he said, "fear is the Car's weapon. They rely on hesitation. Do not give them that advantage." Rhinala nodded. She had learned much from Kane over the past hours. Strategy, anticipation, the human principle that courage could turn impossible odds into victory. But now theory would meet reality. The first strike came without warning. Tiny, fast-moving Car ships darted toward the fleet, testing defenses. Their energy pulses flashed across the darkness, striking at isolated targets. Officers reacted instinctively, but Kane's voice cut through the bridge like a calm storm. "Hold. Observe." Instead of firing immediately, the fleet followed Kane's instructions. Ships moved in ways that seemed unusual, almost reckless, leaving apparent gaps in their formation. The Car scouts, expecting easy targets, surged forward, but Kane's plan unfolded perfectly. "Now," Kane commanded. The fleet moved in coordinated precision. Ships flanked the Car attackers, cutting off retreat paths. Energy beams, previously masked by clever maneuvers, struck from unexpected angles. The Car were caught off guard, their first wave faltering. Rhinala felt awe rise within her. The Car were skilled, intelligent, and aggressive. Yet the human strategies Kane taught were even more formidable. They used psychology, prediction, and adaptability to turn a small fleet into an almost unstoppable force. The battle intensifies, the Car responded. Larger ships moving forward, their weapons blazing with coordinated precision. For a moment, it seemed as if the fleet might be overwhelmed, but Kane remained calm. "Remember the principle," he said, voice steady. "Strength alone does not win. Adaptation wins. Use the environment, use the enemy's assumptions against them." Rhinala watched as the fleet executed maneuvers she had never imagined. Ships danced between asteroid belts, used gravitational anomalies for sudden repositioning, and created false trails to confuse sensors. The Car hesitated, recalculated, and in their confusion began to lose cohesion. "Captain, Orin whispered, eyes wide. I've never seen anything like this. It's brilliant, Kane nodded. Humanity survived because we could see opportunities where others saw only danger. Courage is measured by action, not numbers. Even the smallest fleet can outthink the largest enemy. As the battle raged, Renala realized something profound. Kane was not just teaching tactics, he was showing the essence of humanity itself. Humans had survived countless threats, not because of technology alone, but because of ingenuity, cooperation, and the refusal to surrender. A turning point. The car unleashed a massive strike against the fleet's left flank. Sensors showed several ships under heavy fire, shields flickering. Panic threatened to spread among the crew. Renala felt her heart pound. Kane's voice cut through the tension. Focus, use what you've learned. Don't panic, adapt. Following his instructions, ships moved in unexpected ways. Smaller vessels drew the enemy into traps, while larger ships attacked from angles the car never anticipated. One by one, the attacking ships were neutralized or forced to retreat. Renala realized the truth behind the Terran legend. Humans never fought blindly. Every move, every action was calculated, purposeful, and flexible. Courage was not recklessness. It was clarity under pressure, combined with a mind ready to change plans at a moment's notice. Even as the battle raged, Kane moved among the officers, guiding, advising, and encouraging. His presence was a steady anchor in chaos, lessons in real time. The bridge was alive with energy, officers communicating rapidly, ships responding to precise commands, and Kane observing every action. He corrected minor errors immediately, praised quick thinking, and demonstrated subtle maneuvers that turned potential disasters into victories. Observe, he said, pointing to the sensors. The car rely on patterns. They predict what they see. Break the pattern and you control the flow of battle. Always stay one step ahead. Renala saw her crew begin to embody these principles. Even the youngest officers, once uncertain, now made bold decisions with confidence. They adapted to changing situations, anticipated moves, and coordinated attacks seamlessly. Kane's training had transformed them. They were no longer merely following orders, they were thinking, reacting, and planning like Terran warriors. The human spirit in action hours into the battle. A massive car ship, larger than any the fleet had faced before, appeared on the sensors. Its energy signature was overwhelming, its shields nearly impenetrable. Officers froze, fear creeping into their movements. Do not fear, Kane said calmly. Fear is a choice. Courage is action. Observe, adapt, and strike where they least expect it. He devised a plan on the spot, using smaller ships to create distractions, while the larger vessels targeted weak points in the car ship's defenses. The maneuver was risky, almost reckless by conventional standards, but it worked. The massive car vessel was forced into retreat, its attacks disrupted and ineffective. Renala felt pride swell in her chest. This was not luck. This was human ingenuity, taught by a warrior who had survived centuries. The galaxy may have forgotten humans, but their spirit was alive, embodied in Kane and now in her fleet. Aftermath of the first clash. As the battle subsided, the car fleet retreated into the darkness, regrouping for another attack. The fleet had won the first engagement, but Kane knew this was only the beginning. Victory is not the absence of struggle, he said, voice steady. It is the ability to endure, adapt, and learn. Today you faced fear, confusion, and overwhelming odds, and you prevailed. Remember this lesson. A human never gives up, never surrenders, and never stops thinking. Renala surveyed her crew. They were exhausted but exhilarated. Confidence shone in their eyes, and a newfound unity bonded them. Kane's lessons had transformed them from ordinary officers into a cohesive force, capable of facing unimaginable threats. Captain, Kane continued, this battle is over, but the war is not. The car will return stronger and more cunning. We must prepare, adapt, and remain vigilant. Every victory, every lesson brings us closer to survival. Renala nodded, understanding fully. Humans had survived because they could learn, adapt, and inspire others to do the same, and now she and her fleet were part of that legacy. Reflection and resolve later. As the fleet regrouped, Renala walked to the observation deck. Stars stretched endlessly before her, but now they seemed alive with possibilities rather than emptiness. Kane joined her silently, his gaze fixed on the horizon. You have done well today, Kane said quietly. But remember, this is only the beginning. The Car are relentless. They will test your limits, and each time you must rise higher than before. Renala turned to him. I understand. And I trust you. Your lessons. They've changed my fleet. They've changed me. Kane nodded. Good. Humanity survived because we never stopped believing in what was possible even when all hope seemed lost. That same spirit lives in you now, and it will guide you through the trials ahead. For the first time, Renala truly felt the weight of history and the responsibility it carried. Humans had not just fought wars, they had preserved courage, intelligence, and adaptability for centuries. And now she understood what it meant to stand alongside a human warrior, to face the impossible, to think beyond fear, and to never surrender. The stars outside seemed to shine brighter, reflecting the hope and courage that Kane had brought into her fleet. The Car had tested them, but humanity's lesson had been learned. Victory was possible, even against overwhelming odds when courage, strategy, and unity guided every action. Renala took a deep breath, feeling resolve settle in her chest. The war was far from over, but with Kane's guidance and the spirit of humanity alive in her fleet, she knew they could face whatever came next. The coming storms would be fierce, but they would stand together as warriors, and for the first time in centuries, the galaxy could hope again. The Car fleet returned at dawn, a massive dark wave stretching beyond the sensor's range. Captain Rin Alaveth stood on the bridge, her gaze steady. She felt no fear, only determination. The lessons Commander Elias Kane had taught them ran through her mind. Anticipate, adapt, and never yield. Kane stood beside her, calm as ever. They have regrouped. This is the final test. Every move they make will be to overwhelm, to confuse, to break you. Do not let them. Renala nodded. The fleet was ready, stronger than she had ever imagined. Officers moved with precision, ships responding instantly to commands, each pilot aware of the whole formation. Kane had transformed them from ordinary soldiers into a unit capable of facing impossible odds. Captain, Orin whispered, they're larger than before. We've never seen this many car ships together. Kane's eyes narrowed. Numbers do not win battles. Thinking, courage, and unity do. Watch carefully. Apply what you have learned. The battle begins. The Car advanced with terrifying speed, their weapons blazing across the void. Ships darted in and out of asteroid belts, energy beams streaking past as officers coordinated defenses. Renala felt the tension on the bridge, but it was controlled. A calm fire fueled by preparation and trust. Kane's voice guided every move. Do not engage until I signal. Observe their pattern. Notice their assumptions. Break them. The Car expected the fleet to fight defensively. They struck the edges, probing for weaknesses. But Kane had anticipated every move. Ships feigned vulnerability, luring the enemy into traps. Smaller vessels darted in and out, striking at critical systems, while larger ships attacked from unexpected angles. The Car faltered. Their formations broke under the pressure of tactics they could not predict. Kane's human strategies turned apparent weakness into strength, confusion into advantage. Renala felt awe swell inside her. She had seen battles before, but this was different. This was genius, courage and instinct working together to create victory from impossible odds. The warrior's principle. As the battle raged, one massive car cruiser broke through the front lines, targeting the fleet's center. Officers froze for a split second, a moment that could have meant disaster. Kane's voice cut through the tension. Act. Adapt. Focus where they least expect it. Renala saw smaller ships maneuver to distract the cruiser, drawing its attention away from the center. Larger vessels positioned to attack weak points Kane had identified. The car cruiser fired relentlessly, but its strikes were countered, blocked, and avoided through precise coordination. Humans survive because we anticipate, because we act decisively, because we do not panic, Kane said. Courage is more than bravery. It is clarity in the face of fear. Renala understood now. The stories were true. Humanity had faced enemies far stronger and survived, not because of sheer power, but because they combined intelligence, adaptability, and heart. The fleet had learned that principle, and it was being proven in real time. Turning the tide, the car attempted to regroup, sending waves of smaller ships to overwhelm the fleet. But Kane's training had prepared everyone. Communications were seamless, attacks coordinated, and every move calculated. The car were drawn into traps at every turn. Energy beams crisscrossed the void, ships maneuvered with impossible precision, and the tide began to turn. One by one, car ships were forced to retreat, their attacks failing, their assumptions dismantled. Rennala watched with pride. Her fleet was no longer just a group of officers. They were thinkers, warriors, and a reflection of humanity's enduring principles. Kane had not just awakened a single warrior. He had awakened the spirit of courage and strategy in everyone aboard. "Captain," Kane said quietly, "this is the moment where courage proves itself. Even against overwhelming odds, humanity finds a way." The final clash, the largest car vessel remained, a dark monolith of power, relentless in its advance. Kane analyzed it quickly. "This is the final obstacle. We apply everything: strategy, coordination, adaptability. Strike as one, move as one, think as one." Rennala gave the order. The fleet moved in perfect unison, smaller ships drawing the car vessel into a position Kane had predicted. Large ships struck from unexpected angles, exploiting weaknesses in the cruiser's defenses. The massive vessel fired continuously, but every attack was countered, redirected, or avoided. Kane's calm guidance inspired the crew. Fear did not exist here, only focus, clarity, and action. They moved as humans had for centuries, united, clever, and unyielding. Slowly, the car cruiser's shields faltered, energy cores overheated. Systems began failing under coordinated attacks. Kane's plan worked flawlessly. With a final precise maneuver, the vessel was forced to retreat. The remaining car ships followed, retreating into the darkness. The battle was won. Victory and realization. The bridge erupted in controlled celebration. Officers cheered quietly, ensuring they maintained focus, but joy was impossible to hide. Rennala exhaled deeply, realizing the magnitude of what had just occurred. Kane stood silently, surveying the aftermath. "Victory is not the end," he said. "It is proof that courage, strategy, and adaptability are stronger than fear, numbers, or aggression. Today, you have seen what it means to fight like a human warrior." Rennala approached him. "I understand now. Humans were never just fighters. They were thinkers, planners, and unifiers. And you've reminded the galaxy of that truth." Kane nodded. "Humans survive because we adapt, learn, and inspire others to do the same. Legends live not just in stories, but in the spirit of those who embody them." The galaxy awakens. News of the battle spread across communications. The car had retreated, and the fleet had survived against impossible odds. Sensors across nearby systems detected the aftermath. Fleeing car ships, disrupted energy signatures, and evidence of strategic brilliance unlike anything the galaxy had seen in centuries. Ambassadors and fleets from distant civilizations began searching for humans curious and hopeful. Rennala's fleet became a symbol of courage, inspired by Kane's guidance. Humanity, thought to be extinct, was now alive in spirit, strategy, and example. Rennala watched the stars, feeling a sense of awe. The galaxy had forgotten humans, but their legacy had never truly vanished. Kane had not only survived, he had preserved humanity's lessons, and now the galaxy would remember. The parting of the warrior after the battle, Kane prepared to leave. His mission had been to awaken the spirit of humanity and guide the fleet through the first test. Now the galaxy would take its first steps toward remembering and embracing the legacy of Terran warriors. Rennala met him on the observation deck. "Will you stay?" she asked softly. Kane shook his head. "My duty continues elsewhere. Humanity may have been scattered, but the lessons must travel with those who will carry them forward. You and your fleet have seen what humans can do. Teach it, spread it, inspire it." Rennala felt a pang of sadness but also gratitude. "I understand, and I will not forget." Humanity's courage lives on, in all of us who fight with strategy, clarity, and heart. Kane's eyes softened. Good. Remember, humans never die. We may sleep, scatter, or hide, but we endure. Courage, ingenuity, and the refusal to surrender are eternal. Share that with the galaxy. And with that, Kane departed in his shuttle, disappearing into the endless stars. A new dawn Rhinala stood alone on the observation deck, watching the stars shimmer. The car threat had been repelled, but the galaxy would face many more challenges. Yet she felt hope stronger than ever. Humans had survived, their lessons were alive, and their spirit now guided her fleet. Legends are not just stories, she whispered. They are proof of what is possible. Across the galaxy, fleets reorganized, civilizations prepared, and whispers of Terran warriors spread. The message was clear. Humanity had survived, and their courage could never be forgotten. Rhinala turned to her crew, pride swelling in her chest. "We have seen the truth," she said. "Courage, intelligence, and unity can overcome any obstacle. Humanity's warriors are not extinct, and we are ready to carry that spirit forward." The stars stretched endlessly before them, vast and full of possibility. But for Rhinala and her fleet, the darkness was no longer frightening. It was a stage. A place to prove once again that courage, strategy, and the human spirit could triumph over any threat. The galaxy had forgotten humans. Now it would remember. And for the first time in centuries, humanity's warriors had truly returned.